We will. I'll get that sent.
Oh, here we go. Still didn't go on. Gordy, will you make sure that your mic is on?
Question?
Will you please make sure your mic is on?
I think you just,
And it's still showing red.
it's on now.
Okay, now we're ready. Okay. Meeting will come to order. This is the Cache County Council meeting on Tuesday, October 12th, with snow and broken limbs, but luckily not in this building. So we welcome you today, and we will begin with an opening from Councilwoman Barbara Tidwell.
Thank you. I'd like to make my remarks in the form of a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here this day. We're grateful for this beautiful county that we live. We're grateful for the people and the constituents that we serve. We're grateful, Heavenly Father, for the water that has been given us, and pray that we would continue to be blessed. We're grateful for this great country that we live in, and pray for the leaders of this country that they would be able to lead in a good moral way and help those as we are members of this great country, that we could continue to have the freedoms that we so enjoy. We're grateful to serve on this council. We pray that thou would be with each and every one of us, that we would have concern, that we would be able to state our thoughts and our feelings in a civil manner and keep ourselves in such a way that we would not cause contention. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Barbara. Next item is review and approval of agenda. We've had two requests. We have a request from our state Senator Chris Wilson, who has a conflict later on in the evening. If we could move item 10A, consideration of the Fair River Health Department test to stay, toward the top of the agenda. And we've also had a request from our tax administrator, chief deputy auditor, Diana Schaefer, to move item 8A, Board of Equalization matters, and 11D, property tax relief requests, also to the top of the agenda due to some constraints that she's having. I'd recommend to the council perhaps to move them between items number 5 and item number 6. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second?
With those changes?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda is review and approval of minutes. And council, as I didn't get a chance to look at those until late, and I did notice there were some changes that needed to be made, and wondered if anyone would move to save those until our next meeting, so that those, there was a motion that was missing out of there, so that changes could be made.
Well, there was that change, and I also noticed that they misspelled Mickel's name. It was listed as Nickel instead of Mickle. So that would need to be changed also.
Okay. Well, I will entertain a motion then to just save them until the next meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to save the minutes until our next council meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll go to item number 5, report of our county executive, David Zook.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to report on the storm event we had last night. It's been a busy early morning and busy day for a lot of our staff and team members, especially our public works crews. We have a lot of damage around our county and various communities, as well as on our county grounds and facilities. Thankfully, our facilities fared pretty well. We do have one building that was hit over at the fairgrounds that probably has a couple $1,000s worth of damage, but other than that, I have not heard of any other building damage that occurred as a result of the storm. However, probably every tree on our grounds has some kind of some kind of damage. Some of them pretty severe. Our road department's going to be helping clean up the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds was hit really hard. Our senior center, obviously these grounds you saw, they've been working on all day. So for the most part, we're in pretty good shape, weathered the storm pretty well, but a lot of tree damage. So we'll be working on that cleanup. Just want to thank all of our staff for what they did. I was getting reports all morning from them, and I know they're working hard out there. So maybe not used to having to plow roads this early in the year, but they were ready to go. So thank you to them. I just want to apologize for not making your budget workshop that you just had. Congressman Moore asked that would help him put together a meeting with elected officials, and thank you to those of our county elected officials who were able to make it to that. We had a good meeting with Congressman Moore and a number of our elected officials throughout the county, and talked about some issues that are important to us. I did bring to his attention that we need help with the railroad, specifically in relation to the State Route 30 project that we heard about at our last meeting and the problems we're having with the railroad there. And of course, I talked to him about cell towers in Logan Canyon as well. We talked about some really good topics with representatives from most of the cities, and like I said, several county reps, and our state senator was there, and one of our state representatives as well. I also want to report on our suicide prevention concert that we had on September 30th. And I just want to start by thanking the council once again for your willingness to support that event. The fact that you were willing to provide us a safety net in case we were not able to raise the funds in that short period of time made it possible for us to move forward and actually put the event together and make it happen. It was a great success. We had probably 2,000 people who attended. It was a great concert, great show, and a lot of educational information was shared in between the musical acts. And I have heard so much good feedback from people who had been struggling, or family members of people who had been struggling, who were able to receive help either that night or since then. And a lot of personal stories and a lot of really good feedback since then. So it was a great event, and once again, I just want to thank you for your support of that event. Speaking of events, NACO, National Association of Counties, Next Gen group was here in our county. Next Generation's group of leaders is a subset of the National Association of Counties, and they've had their conference for the last 2 days here in Cache County. And it was nice that we were able to host them here and show them some of the things we have to offer, and also talk about a number of issues that are important to all of us as county leaders across the nation. We talked about everything from finances to immigration, housing to workforce shortages. So a number of issues. We had a lot of experts, and I think we learned some good things, and we were able to help them to learn some good things too. So I just want to thank Sean Milne, our Economic Development Director, for helping to put that together. He worked really hard to make that happen, and to make it happen here in Cache County. It's great that we're able to host that. I have one more thing that I just want to give you as an informational item. and perhaps something that you'd like to consider for your next meeting. And I apologize that I didn't get this to you sooner, but I literally just typed it up, or just had a chance to finish it, but the Utah Republican Party issued a resolution in support of individual freedom over personal vaccination status. And their state central committee adopted it almost a month ago now. And I had an opportunity to read it. I would love it if we could adopt something similar to this. If you'll read it, I think you'll see the value in it. So again, I just wanted to put it out there and let you guys read it, and hopefully we can put that on our agenda next time. I have for you this evening the warrant register. I'll pass that down to Madam Chair. And then the last item I have for you this evening is an appointment. And I guess I'll start off this one as well by thanking you. We came to you earlier this year with a request to change the way we do some things in relation to public defense and indigent defense. We have a very robust county attorney's office, and they prosecute crimes in our office or in our county, and they do a great job. Our county attorney leads a great team there, and they provide that service. However, something that's constitutionally mandated that we do is also to defend people who are accused of crimes, and that's something we do through our indigent defense program. We saw a need to make some changes in the way that is done, and the way it's been done historically is it's all been contracted out, and there haven't been any in-house public defense staff. So what you approved earlier in the year was funding to be able to bring one of those people in-house to be able to do that, to manage that program, to manage our contract public defense, indigent defense attorneys. And so we've gone through an interview process, and Madam Chair, thank you for participating in that process and helping to select the person that I would like to present to you this evening for your advice and consent. And his name is Mike McGinnis. I'd just like to read a short bio of Mike's. And Mike, actually, if you would come up here in case there are any questions after this, so everyone can see who you are. But Mike McGinnis received his Bachelor of Science degree in Law and Constitutional Studies from Utah State University in 2004. He then went on to attend Western Michigan School of Law in Lansing, Michigan, graduating in 2008 with an emphasis in litigation. Mike has been a member of the Utah State Bar since 2009 and began his legal career working as an intern for the Iron County Attorney's Office. After passing the bar, Mike was hired at a Salt Lake criminal defense firm in 2010. While in private practice, Mike started and managed the St. George office for the firm. In 2015, he accepted a public defender position for Cache County, so he's been one of our contract public defender attorneys. As a public defender, Mike has handled many high-profile and serious cases in the community. Mike has a very broad and extensive background in every aspect of the criminal justice system. Additionally, he has argued multiple cases before the Utah Court of Appeals and been involved in the local drug court program. As I mentioned, we had an interview process. We did a series of interviews and had some great candidates that we were able to consider, and Mike rose to the top. So at this time, I would like to appoint him as our public defender and present him to you for your advice and consent.
Council will entertain a motion to appoint Mike McGinnis as the managing public defender.
Move to appoint.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I look forward to coming back and seeing you and getting to know you a little more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for your support of that appointment, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Executive Zook. One thing I do want to mention, and I hate to bring this up, but I think as a council, we need to be really careful that this is, we need to look at bipartisan stuff, and I'm a little nervous about trying to do a verbatim of something that was passed by one of the political parties, although we are each a member of that party, so.
I did make some changes to it, just to let you know. There are a few wording changes, so it's not exactly, but it is very close to what they proposed.
Thank you. Appreciate that information too. Okay, so we will now move to item 10A, since we moved the agenda around a little bit. Pending action, consideration of the Bear River Health Department test to stay order of constraint. As you recall, council, we talked about this and had a really good discussion last meeting, and decided to wait till this meeting to think about it and consider it. And so it's now open for your consideration.
I have a question and maybe a request. As I look at the agenda and that, we've got Brandon McBride, who is administrator of Intermountain Healthcare. Maybe we should let him come present his stuff, and we can ask him a few questions before we go into that.
I think he's not here, and I talked to,
Is he not going to be here?
right, they asked to be pulled off the agenda at the last minute due to some conflicts, and I forgot to mention that to you when we approved the agenda, so my apologies on that.
Okay,
So I don't think he's here, I
apologize
don't
for
see him.
interrupting.
No worries, it was a great question.
Madam Chair, if I could ask a question of our Health Department Director. I know he's here for Mathis in relation to this.
Does the council want to have some more information before we proceed to vote on this?
I've got the question of Jordan.
You've got some questions, okay. I wasn't sure, and so, Jordan, do you have some information for us or can answer some questions?
I think my question's just pretty simple. I'm just curious, when this order was first drafted and implemented, can you tell us what the cases are looking like now compared to that time?
Yeah, so I did send a quick white paper, and it took us a while to get some of this compiled. So cases in almost every age category are currently on the decline. Our cases in 0 to 11-year-olds are actually on the increase right now. From last week from 2 weeks ago to last week, in 1 week, we went up by 74%. So 61 to 106 cases in that age group. And in that white paper, we also looked to see what we're seeing on a statewide level, because there is a possibility that some of these classroom testing events are contributing to that increase. But statewide, where we don't have that, we're also seeing the same trend. Whereas in the other secondary schools, they're either in a plateau or a decline. We're seeing an increase in the number of cases in elementary school kids. Whereas at the time of the order, I would say we were probably in an elevated plateau.
So my follow-up question to that is, at the time when the cases were higher, obviously felt like this order was needed. I know it's regardless of, I guess, if the council does nothing different tonight, it's going to expire within about 10 days. Is that correct?
Yeah, on the 20th is when it expires.
Based on the changes in case counts, do you feel like it's still necessary?
I would say yes, and I mean, if you want to look at this graph, I know I only got that white paper out to everyone. I have the graph up right here if I can plug in.
It's I have it on my email, it came through at 4 o'clock. So you guys might have it on your email as well.
I don't have my adapter. Well, I do actually. Hold on. Do you want me to grab it, or does the council want this?
What was it you were gonna show?
It was a graph showing our most recent trend for 5 to 11-year-olds.
I guess my question is, Madam Chair, if I may ask it,
Look at this on our, we have it on our,
Okay.
Bryce, of those additional cases that we're seeing in the younger, younger school children, are we seeing any hospitalizations? Are they just having?
We're seeing a slight uptick in that same group. And
so-
that graph is in that white paper as well.
So we're saying we're having a slight upbeat. How many are we actually seeing?
So in the last 2 weeks, we have seen a total of 3 hospitalizations
3?
in the 5 to 11-year-old.
Okay.
And my question was, as the order expires here, what is the intention of our health department for the next 30 days
For the next 30 days,
after that?
well, if you were to let it expire, then I don't know that there'd be a whole lot of point in me reissuing another order unless I had direction on what order might be more palatable.
Were you planning on doing another one here in 10 days?
So the original order, as I said last time, I wrote it to, if it's extended by the council, it would automatically expire 60 days past the emergency use authorization for vaccine for this age category, which would allow us to get vaccine to this vaccine ineligible population. So my desire from a public health standpoint would be to allow the order to continue, which is allowed in statute. It doesn't have to go in 30-day increments. If the council wanted to, they could let it. And that was kind of my initial request, because the way I view it, this order doesn't, if cases go down, and we hope they do go down, then this order does nothing. If we said, well, we don't want it, but it's a nice enough order, but we'll let it expire because we don't feel like there's a need for it, we have to go through the administration process again to do the 24-hour notice and jump through all those hoops. So I don't know, did I answer your question?
Well, kind of. Then I guess the next question I've kind of, on this follow-up, a lot of these people, because it's a test to stay, and so everyone's being tested, right? Within that, like different classes and stuff like that, right? Are you seeing, I guess, that uptick in that age? Is it just because of tests? And are there symptoms with any of these?
So we have not, as I put in the white paper, which you can take a look at, is all the classroom tests to stay, Bear River Health Department has not been involved with except for the testing. The schools have been involved in it. And by the testing, I mean the schools have sent them to our established K through 12 sites, but we don't know that this kid is from a classroom versus this kid just came because they wanted to. So we haven't been able to really understand how many of them were symptomatic versus asymptomatic, because the schools have really been taking care of it. And just I did put a table in that paper if you're interested. 10 schools have done a classroom test to stay. Out of those 10, they've been able to identify an additional 42 positives. And out of that testing, we've had about a 27% positivity rate. And the data is not, we don't have clear data on 2 of the classrooms, so that may not hold true, but it is a little bit higher elevated, which may indicate, doesn't for sure indicate, but may indicate that the targeted testing seems to be able to identify positives a little better than the mass testing and remove those, because we are seeing a higher positivity rate in those that are tested.
And how does it mirror with what maybe the schools already had set up? Because they've got systems all set up themselves. Does it mirror, does it work together, or is it another system they've had to kind of do along with theirs?
So we meet weekly with them, and I asked them last week, I said, what is your preference? And they said that they liked the fact that it gives them the option to do that testing, and supports them in that. Before they were just doing, they were just saying, you have a positive case in the classroom, we encourage you to either mask or consider quarantining, and that's where they left it at. And so the reality is the schools want to be out of this probably more than anyone else. And so although they don't love the whole process, I just talked to Steve Norton, and I've talked to Frank Schofield, and both of the positions they would like it to remain in place because it supports them if they need to take action in a situation where they're seeing elevated cases. And so they like the support of being able to take action if they need to. So.
Jordan, on the number of cases and the percent hospitalized, isn't it less than 1% of that age group, 5 to 11? That's such a small number, right?
Yeah, it's small.
Of cases or positive tests. And then, of course, based on how many kids are that age, it's such a small percentage of those kids. I mean, tiny, less than 1%.
Yeah. I don't know the percentage. I'd have to look at the total population in that age group.
I guess that goes with a little bit I'm trying to figure out. How have we had any deaths of a young person in Cache County in the whole time that we've been doing this?
No.
Jordan?
So I guess it's actually really following the science that we're reading about. It's the same thing you're asking, Gina. 0.0000 videos you want to put in there of a chance of a youth getting serious enough with this to pass away. Anyway.
I have a question related to that, Jordan. My kids have, most of my kids have had COVID. And one of my kids has some complications now, medical issues as a result of it. And I was talking to the pediatrician about it. The pediatrician mentioned to me that he and all of the other pediatricians he works with have seen a number of children who have come into them with after effects of COVID, like things like heart damage or kidney damage or things like that. I'm just wondering, do we have any data about those types of things?
It's not real great. The multi-system inflammatory disease that they're seeing is typically after they've been considered recovered, that they're seeing this continued inflammation that impacts multiple systems in there. But I don't think we have real good data on particularly in our area. I can't tell you how many kids in our area are experiencing this.
Another question, I guess, kind of relates to this. We've experienced a lot of this in my family. I had COVID myself, my wife, most of my family members have had it. So we've experienced it firsthand. My mom had it fairly recently. She got very sick. I thought I was going to watch her die in the hospital. She got it from her grandkids. We don't know that exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. That she got it from grandkids. But do we have any data on that kind of transmission? Like how many of the adults who get it got it from kids?
Not really good because we have scaled back quite a bit on the detail that we gather in the case investigation, meaning doing real detailed contact tracing. And mostly just because most people don't really want to talk to us on the phone for an extended period, particularly when most of them aren't feeling that well. So the data isn't, if you ask me, it's never been really good for us to be able to systematically say it went from this. But we do know that household transmission is happens at a higher rate than what you'd probably see in a community type setting.
Thank you.
I had one other question. Do you think this order, in some ways, has created an atmosphere with some parents and kids and students, you know, the high school all the way through of, you know, where I get sick, I'm not saying anything to anybody?
Yeah, there's a probability of
I
that.
guess what I'm saying, I heard that comment several times from a lot of people that I talked to that are within the school system. So I'm wondering if you'd heard the same thing or no.
No, I mean, I think it's every policy has unintended consequences, and I'm not blind to the fact that there's probably some unintended consequences that result from this policy or order. I haven't heard that, but most people don't tell the health director that they're not going to go get tested. So it's not something that I'm not aware of. But the one thing that I was surprised about when I met with the schools is I wasn't aware that Cache County School District had conducted 5 classroom testing events. They feel like they're being able to do it and get a pretty good response. I won't stand up here. It's not 100% response, but they are getting a good response from parents and from the students themselves. And so I was surprised when I found out that there was 5. When I went into that meeting, I was only aware of the CCID one, which was a charter school. And then since we've had multiple ones over in Box Elder County as well. So total we've had 10. And they kind of just happened without a whole lot of fanfare, and we're trying to evaluate as best we can what the impact is. I think we'll see more whether or not this elevation was a result of these testing events, and if this intervention works, then maybe we'll see it come down in the coming weeks. So.
Paul, were you going to ask a
Yeah,
question?
I was going to talk about a couple things. And I got an email from last council meeting when we were talking, and I made the comment that natural immunity is superior to vaccine immunity, and somebody called me out on that and said the CDC had one study from Kentucky, and what was I basing my information on? And I think I've been very careful with every public pronouncement I've made and have not used any personal anecdotes, because anecdotes aren't data. I'm very stickler about the data. There's been 15 published studies, and the one that I was referencing was one coming out of Israel that they did that was over 500,000 participants, showing that natural immunity was superior to vaccine immunity. And there is something in the data that would say that after you've had COVID, recovered, have that immunity, that it could possibly be boosted by one additional vaccine, which would mean you're not fully vaccinated according to some of the data. So natural immunity is there. And I think we need to be pretty sticklers about the data that we're looking at. And we need to really start looking at what is the risk profile rather than talking about just anecdotes. So there was a headline out yesterday, and it's in that right-wing rag, the New York Times. So we know we're not cherry picking here. But basically the accurate thing is to say your unvaccinated kid is much safer than a vaccinated grandma. In fact, an unvaccinated child is much safer than a vaccinated 40-year-old, according to the data, and that comes out of nationwide statistics from England. Children under 12 appear to be at less risk than vaccinated people in their 40s, if not their 30s. So we're talking about anytime you do a medical intervention or any type of an intervention, it's a risk-reward thing. So what is the risk to these kids that we're talking about? And to David's point about long COVID, right? The damage that comes from kids getting it. I'm going to quote from this article again. It says, for children without a serious medical condition, the danger of severe COVID is so low as to be difficult to quantify. So you got a very low rate there. And the world's biggest study, led by the University College of London, it's yet to be published, but it's out there for review. It was 50,000 total people were surveyed in this. There was about 2% of the children that show some complications from COVID, which isn't trivial. It's every person's important, but it's no more serious than most other things that children succumb to, flu and things like that. So it's a pretty low, even if you're talking you got long COVID, it isn't out of line with any of the other viral diseases that children get. And so it's important that we get back to normal. And if we're looking for significant reductions in risk from vaccination, so if we're saying, hey, we're going to wait for these kids to get vaccinated so we can reduce this risk, we're not going to see those because the risk to the children today are so low as to say, hey, the children are at such low risk right now. Will this vaccine reduce that risk even further? And that was from Emily Oster in that particular thing that I was just referenced. So you start looking at it and you say, okay, our cases have gone up, to your point. But as I look over this graph, near as I can tell from ours, in Cache County, the thing that drove it was on 10-6, Foothill Elementary School over in Box Elder County, not in Cache County, had a 41% positive rate. But if you look at some of the others, it's 0%, 10%, 4%, and things like that. So the most recent study I've seen as far as secondary transmission, household transmission, is about 12%. If you look at all these, are we breaking it out to say what percentage of these kids that are testing positive, one, are symptomatic, two, are we breaking it out by households? I mean, do you have siblings that are in there? Do you have neighbors that are getting it? It's not appearing to me that schools are a vector of transmission in any of this. And even though we're seeing higher case counts, we haven't adjusted for the testing. And if you adjust for the testing, do those case counts then normalize?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out is do they, I see a jump, but I also see a pretty big jump in testing if you look at it and say, the number of kids getting tested probably popped pretty good in the last 2 weeks compared to what it would have been.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, I did say that we're probably seeing some of that increase because of that. But statewide, we're also seeing an increase. So that was our...
And are the kids getting tested statewide? I mean, are we doing something different now that schools have been in session?
We're the only one with an order like this, so I don't know that there's any targeted testing going on statewide. That was kind of, at least in a quick, this morning, trying to put, after we got the data from the schools and trying to figure it out, that was kind of our control, was to say, okay, what does it look like towards, what are we seeing at the state level? Because we're the only one with an order here, so is this artificial? And I think when you look at those graphs, ours is quite a bit bigger jump than the state. So if we went back and tried to pull out those, but we do have some and we also have some incomplete schools, so we don't know exactly how many were tested there. So we need to try to do our best to complete this data set, but at the same time, we've been really hesitant to push the schools for it because our whole goal with this was to be not only non-intrusive for students, but for our educators as well. And if we try to get down into the weeds trying to really understand that, then it puts a burden back on the schools that we didn't want to put on them. So in that white paper, that's the limitation that I cite in there is I don't think I'm ever going to be able to fully understand the extent of it because the whole goal of this is to be non-intrusive, and in doing so, I can't get the granular data that would tell us exactly how well or how ineffective this policy really is.
Madam Chair, I'd like to call a vote.
I'd like to say something before we call the vote.
Would you be okay with that?
Is that okay, Carl? Thank you. There was a very wise man that said, "I teach correct principles and the people govern themselves." And I've had numerous emails, different things come to mind. And I've been very impressed with all the data that's been presented. And I think that we have good information on each end of the spectrum. But as one of my constituents wrote, we have the experts. You know, we have the medical experts, we have everyone that, with the health department, all those experts. But I think we're forgetting a group of experts, and that's the parents of the children themselves. They know what is best for their family and for their child and for their children. We can listen to all these reports, we can get all this information, but when it comes down to it, the parents of their children are the experts. They know what's best for their children. And I think that we need to let them be the experts of what's happening with their families. And if it turns out that their expert advice is that they don't want their children to go to school because of what's going on, then they're the expert for their family. If their expert opinion is, I don't want to be my children tested, then they're the experts for that. And I think we need to give them that leeway and let them decide what's best for their family.
I will say this, whatever happens does not change the state law. If we have an elementary still hit that threshold, there is the state law that says shall do a test to stay event for the entire school. So there's the difference between this order and the state law, what happened at Mountain Crest. Because we have had people get confused between the two.
And that does help me, because I did want to ask that question. If we keep this order in place, does that then replace the state order? Or if we have this in place and the school still hits that threshold, they'll still have to have a school-wide test to stay, even if we leave this in place? Does the state order supersede what we have regardless of what we do?
So the way we had the Foothill one, which you can see had a lot of cases associated with it, and they were in jeopardy of breaching as a school. But I told them, I said, listen, the reality is you already did this intervention on a classroom level. So those, I can't remember how many it was it 14?
Yes.
Those 14 cases plus the 4 additional ones that actually led to the test to stay, I said you have to back those out. The whole idea of this intervention, and I spoke with the senator about this, and he seemed okay with it. I know he's not an attorney, but I said, those 18 cases don't count towards that. You already did your intervention, and that classroom's back at 0. You did your intervention, and the whole idea is to do a micro intervention rather than do a macro intervention. So if the order goes away, you're left with the macro intervention, is what I'm saying. If the order goes away, the micro intervention's not there to potentially keep you from, and that was part of the goal, was to do a micro intervention to avoid a larger intervention. Because when you look at the one thing about that positivity rate means we were very targeted in it. The positivity rate on the schools is much lower because you're testing the entire student body. You're testing people that don't need to be tested. And so that was the idea of the micro intervention and the targeted intervention, was to hopefully avoid the macro intervention on the school level, which we cannot get rid of. That is in state statute.
Thank you for that clarification, Jordan. Carl, I believe you wanted to make a motion?
Yep, I would make a motion that we allow the order to expire 30 days after its effective date, which is in about 10 days, I think, and just let it ride out.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to allow the order to expire in 30 days from the day which it was set for, the day it started, and let it just ride out. Is there any further discussion or
So
question?
clarification again, then there will not be another order put out there, Jordan, or is it done?
So we would not be extending the order, and this order expires in 10 days. What day does it expire? 20? October 20th? Yeah.
I'd just
Any other
interject
questions?
that under the code, he could issue another order. I think what Jordan is saying, and he can speak for himself, is that if you let this one expire, his intent isn't to immediately put it back out there, although he could under the statute.
And I think I seconded it because it's that way, right? I don't think as a government it's good to continually operate under emergency orders and have that become your norm, because government's set up to be limited and emergency orders should be used for an emergency, because if everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. So we put this in place, we've identified some things, we've seen some cases, and this does not, in my understanding, handcuff Jordan from looking at something to say, hey, we're starting to see some movement, we'd like to issue another order. Now, it's a 24-hour thing, it goes 24 hours, it goes to Executive Zook to approve, to then put back into place again. So we do have a small delay, but again, this is something that we're talking about, a target of the population that is so low risk as to almost be uncalculable. There's risk, but it's very, very small, and it's not out of the ordinary for that population. Now, for some ages, definitely, but for this age, not so much.
I just had a question. How is Rich and Box Elder County dealing with this? Do we have any information from those councils?
I haven't heard anything from them,
Either.
from the commissioners.
Jordan, have you got any information on that?
Talked to Jeff Scott, and he was interested in getting this white paper, and I think they'll revisit it. They have a meeting closer to the 20th where they'll give consideration for it, and I haven't heard from Rich County on what their plan is.
They don't have any COVID over there.
Yeah, they're tough as nails over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're almost bionic.
So, that,
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's very valuable that I've talked with a lot of people within the school district, several administrators throughout the district, and in talking with a lot of them, they really, like Jordan mentioned, they've got a pretty good system in place. And I think they got to a point, even with all of last year, they got really quite a working relationship, even with parents. And they were so complimentary of the parents at the times that, hey, they'll work with us. Yeah, we can work through things. And they started really working together a lot more. And they were a little fearful that when an order comes out, then all of a sudden, like I questioned, sometimes that then just throws a little bit of gas on the fire. And we had something going good, we were working really good, and we had these little bumps of a rise in something, but then we go target that, we work with the parents, and I keep thinking that that's what schools are supposed to do. That's kind of how and I just didn't want an order to get in the way and cause another flare-up, and so that's what kind of bothered me. And the other thing is anything that we can do to empower parents, empower the teachers, this, I think that's a plus. And letting this order expire, I think is huge. I would support that next week, and so I know that's how I'll be voting.
so the question I have before we vote then, if we vote to allow this order to expire, I just want to be clear, it's not going to be extended. The health department, Jordan would have to write a whole new thing and come to us and follow that process. Is that correct, John?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's what I needed.
Was that what you needed to know as
Clarification
well?
too.
Okay. Are you ready to vote, council?
We are.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to allow the order of constraint to expire as written, so by October 20th? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Jordan, thank you. Thanks for coming and for the information and everything. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have a 5:30 public hearing that we need to move to next. Okay, this is the, let's find it on here. Well, let's go, so we have, it says 5:30 public hearings, and we have set public hearings, but let's actually go to item 9C, the public hearing for the T&B Nelson rezone, and then we can come back and get A and B, since we're so far off the time for that. Unless there's an objection. Let's see. Let me get Chris Herrild first to give us a little background on this before we actually open the public hearing. Thank you. Chris, also, one of the questions that maybe you could answer for us, if you have some more information. Originally, this was going to be on the agenda, and then the proponents of this proposal, it had passed planning and zoning. It came to us. We had it on the agenda. They asked to withdraw in order for them to get, or postpone in order for them to get more information. And now they've asked for it to be back on the agenda, and we put it back on. So if you have any information, additional information for us about what new information there is on why they did that or to consider, please let us know.
Okay. Thanks, Janine.
And council did, I just wanted to mention, council did we hold that up, Barbara? We did just receive within the hour a letter about the rezone.
I got a copy of that also just before the meeting, and I've done some prep on it, so if there are questions that come up from that letter. I think that letter addresses the same question that you had, Madam Chair, on why that item was postponed. I was also unaware as to why the need was there to postpone the item, other than that there was an interest, a hope that they could maybe come up with something to convey their interest or need to the council. And I think that's what's in this letter that you've also received. But I'll give you a quick review of the request prior to the public hearing. On the map that you can see on the screen, I've highlighted in green the property that's proposed for rezone from the A10 zone to the RU5 zone. It's approximately 11.5 acres in size. You'll notice there's some different coloration on that map. That's the red and the, let me find the mouse here. Oh, never mind, that's my laptop. I'm used to driving the other one. If I zoom in, you can see a little more clearly. There's a property right here that's a Richmond City property that's their spring that serves as a culinary source for the city.
Smithfield City.
What did I say?
Richmond.
Oh, sorry. Wow.
Border war was coming.
Trying to make enemies. Sorry. Yeah, Smithfield City. And that gray area around there is identified as a source water protection area, Zone 1. And then the red area is Zone 2. Now, what's important about those two zones is the county code specifies that septic systems are not permitted in source water protection areas 1 or 2. And that's probably for obvious reasons, that you don't want contamination in what's a public culinary source from a septic system, possible contamination. So that's one of the things that was identified by staff and, well, obvious to staff, and then also shared with the Planning Commission in their review. When we point to the Planning Commission, they did review this and made a recommendation to the County Council to deny the request, unanimous request, that it didn't meet the requirements of the county code. Well, what requirements there were. So what we look at typically are any major significant safety issues that might create a problem for any sort of rezone. And often this will look at, does it make sense in this area? But also, if this were approved, what significant hurdles would be required for the applicant down the road? So let's say, for example, this rezone were approved. They would still be beholden or be required to meet the standards that are in place, which means you can't have a septic system in zone 1 or 2, you can't build on a substandard road, and you have to meet spacing requirements. So even if the council were to approve this rezone, they would still have to meet those requirements. Nothing has changed. And so having read through that letter, I know a lot of those items were addressed and contested to say that we disagree with this. But from a standpoint of this going through a subdivision process or requesting a permit from the administrative side of your process, it would still have to meet those same requirements. So in the case where a rezone comes forward, 1, does it make sense there, but 2, can it meet the requirements later? It failed on both counts from staff's perspective. And so that was conveyed to the Planning Commission. So what you have before you is 3 conclusions that the commission and staff reached and recommended to the council. First being that the location of the source water protection zone creates a problem for the applicant to put additional structures there that would require a septic system. I think I need to make a distinction in there. I think in the letter that was provided by the recent letter provided by the applicant's counsel, they make a reference to a septic tank. That's not what the county code states. It's specific to septic systems, which is broader than just a tank. That's the pipes and a drain field, et cetera. I'm sure there can be some discussion there with the letter if they have some comment. The other item that's the second point that's made has to do with that road that provides access to the property being substandard. That is correct. That road does not meet the minimum standard requirements under the current road manual requirements. So that's 2 10-foot wide paved travel lanes and 4-foot wide gravel shoulders with 66-foot wide right-of-way and clear zone requirements. It doesn't meet those requirements along the frontage or any of this spacing coming up to that property. Maybe there are a couple spots it might, but as a whole, it does not. The third thing that's listed as a conclusion is the identification of the minimum spacing requirements for a private road to come on, or a public road to come onto an existing county road. That standard is currently set at 300 feet. I think the spacing to the next road was 125, 175 feet. I forgot now. I'll look real quick. Apologies, I didn't remember that. 125 feet approximately. So it doesn't meet those spacing requirements either. Those are all things in place for a safety standpoint to consider the safe travel and use of public roads for citizens who might use that road. All those things combined led to the commission's recommendation to council that request be denied. But I can address any questions now or later as you consider further discussion on that item.
Thank you, Chris. I think we'll open it for a public hearing.
Can I ask
Oh,
just one
yes,
question?
Carl, go ahead.
Maybe I need to ask the proponent, but the rezone part is just what's outlined in green.
Correct.
The proponent's letter talks about an existing home being there and then them wanting to add one more home. The question I have is, why isn't the existing home included in the rezone? Because my thoughts were, if it were included in the rezone, RU5 would then, just by virtue of the zone, limit it to only one more residence able to be built, because there would be one already there. And so, to me, that would mitigate some of these other issues if there was something in place that said, no, you can't have another one there. There's already one there.
Yep.
There is
There is one home there. This would allow them to place one additional home on the property.
Okay.
Yep.
From that map, I couldn't tell.
You're correct, it was zoomed out too far to really see that. My apologies.
All right.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, we'll open the public hearing, and I forgot to mention, this is a request to rezone 11.53 acres from the agricultural A10 zone to the rural RU5 zone, and this is located at 1939 Canyon Road near Smithfield. So if there are people who'd like to comment on this, if you'll come to this mic right here and state your name and give us your comments.
Wayne Caldwell. I'm counsel that represents the applicants, Travis and Brittany Nielsen. They're here in the audience, sitting back there. And so I appreciate the opportunity to address the concerns that were brought forward in by the Planning and Zoning hearing. So I would maybe just address them in the order that they were brought up. In all other regards, the property was found to have met the requirements with the exception of the 3 problem areas that were talked about previously. The first one being the septic, and I guess our photo is gone there, the satellite, but I would point out the fact that the Bear River Health Department doesn't say it's impossible, they're saying it's impractical. Can you do it? Because there is portions of this property that are outside the source water protection zone. I would start there. The issue that they raise is the septic needs to go outside the source water protection zone. There are portions of this property outside the source water protection zone. They would be suitable for that purpose. And we can see that portions of the property are within the source water protection zone. The majority of the property is within the source water protection zone, but there are portions that are outside. And as we pointed out in the application process, the neighbor, and if you look at it, there's a lower portion of the property where the existing home is, and there's about 6 acres up on top that I think where if the rezone was approved and a subdivision was approved, the portion up above, there's about 6 acres of flat land above the canyon, and that would be the area that the second home would go in with the rezone. If you look just to the left there in that photo, it's a little bit further to the west. There are 2 homes there. Those 2 homes are also up on top. They are also contained in the source water. They also are located in the source water protection zone, and they have septic systems that are off the hill down below outside the source water protection zone. So there is very recent precedent, that was within the last 4 years, that they were able to get that approval from the Bear River Health Department to install that. And so although I know that they're saying it's impracticable, it actually is, there's a working example of that happening right in a property that is adjacent to it, that touches it. So that portion of it, I understand the concern. I think that can be allayed as the rezone moves forward and the subdivision process happens. That application could be made for that, and there is a great example of how that can be done, not in another part of the county, but the immediate property under the exact same conditions. So I think that issue, although we understand it, I think it can be overcome. So the other issues that I think are probably more definitional, more of issues of road issues, I would speak to the second issue. The second issue, that being that the Smithfield Canyon Road is substandard. And in our letter that we presented, it talks about there being another rezone that was allowed to occur in 2013. And that's further up the canyon. So if you go up the road even further, a couple miles, there was a rezone that was approved on the same road. And so I think the planning and zoning hearing, the objection was that this road is substandard and therefore there can't be, because the road standards have been changed since 2013. And the reason why I've submitted the letter is because it's informative to look at the letter, or to look at the standards in 2013 as they relate to this road, and as they relate to the standards in 2021. In 2021, in 2013, when the other rezone was allowed further up the canyon, the requirements for the road were a little, there was less division in the categories of roads. And so it just referred to it as just more of a local road. And now they have a minor or a major local road. And this is, it would be categorized as a minor local road. And under a minor local road, it actually requires less shoulder in 2021 than it did in 2013. So if the width of the paved portion of the road was 20 feet then, it's 20 feet now. So the portions of the road that are pointed out as being substandard, it's the same road that was approved in the Stillwater rezone as being a road that wasn't substandard. So for that purpose, the road meets it's the same standard, or it's actually it requires one less foot than it did before on the shoulders, or 1 foot of paved. In 2013, it required a foot of paved shoulder and then the gravel shoulder. And in 2021, the standard for this road does not require a paved shoulder, it just requires the gravel shoulder. So for that reason, the road is the same road that was approved in 2013. The standards did not affect this road as it relates to a rezone. And so we feel that it is appropriate. It's not appropriate to reject the application based on the substandard argument on the road. And then the last issue has to do with the spacing between the driveway and other driveways. I think the Planning and Zoning Commission talked about it as private roads, distances between private roads. And in the letter, we point out the fact that as you look in the county road manual, there's no designation of private road. There's other types of designations. But as far as private roads, there's no designation requiring any spacing requirement between a private road, except for 88 feet, which is required between private roads and intersections. And here, as we pointed out, there's previously pointed out, there's 125 feet between this road and the other house up above that we pointed out earlier with the septic issue that we're using as an illustration. That one is 125 feet away. So with that in mind, I think the road manual does not have a standard that this project doesn't meet. And there's also another issue there in the road standards, the county road manual. It also points out that a road like this, if you look there, when this subdivision was approved, an RU5 would be very consistent with the other uses of property around. If you look, they're all smaller than an acre, acre and a half. The subdivision that was approved for these little parcels was done in 1996. The county approved that, and you see the little parcels in front of it, and there's about 3 of those in front of it, and then up above there's another little smaller 3 or 4 acre parcel up there, and that all happened in 1996. And this is the remainder parcel from that subdivision. So when that subdivision was approved by the county, this was not part of the subdivision. This was the property that was left behind as the remainder portion of it. And this was the driveway that the county approved for that access to that property. And in the county road manual, it talks about, as part of the process for applying for a subdivision, that a subdivision can be approved for multiple parcels, but in this case, it would be 2 parcels if the subdivision was approved, to access the driveway that already accesses that property, and then to go up to the property above. It just needs an easement to do that. And where the applicants in this case would own both of those parcels, they would be able to leave an easement as part of that subdivision process when they applied. That would allow them to have access through a driveway. And there is no requirement there's nothing in the road manual to disallow that. In fact, it provides that is an appropriate use of a driveway if there's an easement that can be recorded and allow the property to continue to use the rest of it. So 2 parcels can be fed by a driveway. So that existing driveway, without even talking about it being a private road, can also be used for the parcel above. I would also point out that as far as the increased traffic and safety issues, as pointed out, this would only allow one further dwelling on that parcel after it's subdivided. So as far as adding a lot of traffic or more danger or any of those arguments that these zoning ordinances are designed for, I don't think that's really a major concern here. Seems that this is a family subdivision, dividing it for allowing one more use of property that, as it sits now, is vacant and unused. And it could be something that I think would be beneficial for the family, be beneficial for the community. I don't think it'd be inconsistent with the small agricultural uses that are going on there to have an RU5. And for those reasons, we would submit that it meets the standards, and some of the issues that still remain, I guess those concerns will be addressed in the application for the subdivision, where we could provide, when we could apply to the county and show that a septic is feasible. It can be done. It was done next door. And the driveway issue we can address with the easement. And then the substandard road, we would argue, it's the same standard for the previous rezone. And it would be arbitrary and capricious to now say that it's not standard. It's too substandard to allow any more development at all. And I will submit it to the county on that, and I will just be happy to answer any questions anybody might have, if they have any.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Caldwell?
The only question I have is there a map anywhere showing what portion of the parcels in the source protection zone and outside of the source protection zone right now?
There is. It was in the first one that they showed that had the colored portion that was hard to see the house. I think the question was there an existing house, and it was hard to see because it was covered in red there. And so that was one of the previous illustrations. So the portion that I can point out where it is, it's below the houses. Anything below the house, so you can see that little section of green below the house and down the driveway and across there. All of that portion of it is outside the source water protection zone.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this in the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Chris, you had a comment on this?
Just one comment. I didn't address any of the points brought up by the representative. I'm happy to address those later in the meeting.
Okay.
Clarification for some statements that were perhaps not in line with our code.
Thank you, Chris. We will have that later on the agenda, and we can have you do that then. Okay, so council, since it had 5:30 on the agenda, we need to set public hearings from items 9A and 9B. I'll entertain a motion. Yes.
I would like to, I move to set the public hearing for October 26th for resolution 2021-21, 2021-22 for their respective times.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set public hearings for October 26th, 2021 on resolutions 2021-21 and 2021-22. That is a tongue twister. One is a resolution declaring county interest in real property located on Wolfpack Way, go Wolves, described as parcel number 45850 as surplus property. The other is a resolution declaring county interest in real property located on SR 30 Valley View Highway, described as portions of parcels numbers 56117 and 1232-9 as surplus property, and approving the sale and conveyance thereof. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and those public hearings will be set. Okay, we're now going to, I feel like I'm drawing all over my agenda, little lines. We're going to go back to item 8A, Board of Equalization matters, and so I need a motion to move into the Board of Equalization.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to move into the Board of Equalization. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this is for approval of the recommendations of the hearing officers for the Board of Equalization and Greenbelt Appeals. Diana Schaefer, do you have any information you'd like to give to us?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So before you are all the changes that occurred during Board of Equalization that you all attended, and the auditor's office duly recorded. If you look to the back of the document, you'll see there's two places for signatures. One is on a Greenbelt appeal that happened back in April where there was no change. On page 4 is the summary information of 174 appeals. 89 of those got adjusted, so about 52% of them got an adjustment, which amounted to a reduction of taxable value of about 6.6 million. That equivocates to around 67 to 70,000 in taxes to the county. And this was, all based on evidence brought by the appellants and also presented to you by the assessor's office.
Thank you.
And we present that as accurate for your signature. Ask that both pages be signed. And I also have some pages that need to be signed by the elected official as we officially turn the tax roll over to the treasurer's office for collection.
Okay, council, Chair will entertain a motion to approve these recommendations.
Madam Chair, move to approve these recommendations from the Board of Equalization held this year.
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendations of the hearing officers for the Board of Equalization this year. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we will then move to item 10D, which is the property tax relief request.
Pretty much. We're toast. We're paying.
Oh, wait, I forgot. We need to move out of the Board of Equalization. Do I have a motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn from the Board of Equalization. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll move to item 11D. Sorry, I think I said 10.
Yeah.
So many numbers and letters today. Okay, property tax relief requests. Diana, do you have any information that you'd like to give the council about these requests for property tax relief?
So the first parcel 257 and 21, is that what we're referring them?
Yes, by parcel numbers.
Comes with a strong recommendation for approval due to a permanent disability for this young man.
Okay.
On the parcel 335 and 51, this would be her third year coming in front of the council. If you look at that last paragraph, we were unable to get all of the financial information on the household, which leaves us unable to recommend an approval. Of course, the council can override that. I would point your attention to, it's probably approximately page 13 or 14 of your document where staff has totaled extra deposits of $6,286 that were unexplained for the year. And that's about $500 a month that's unexplained. So with that, like I say, it leaves it a little ambiguous for a strong recommendation from our office, and we leave it to the council to deny it or approve, or table for more information. Any questions?
Any questions?
Nope.
Any motions?
I'll make a motion for, let's see, 0051, that we approve the hardship at the 38% level.
Second that.
At 38%. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve 0021 at 38%.
Yeah, but didn't he say a different number?
I think it's 00, is it 0021? Is that the one you mean?
No.
5-1.
Yeah,
51.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let me look. Maybe I was looking at the wrong one. Their numbers are, okay, their numbers are really similar. There's
Yeah,
5-1
21
and
50.
2-1.
There's 21 and 51.
Yeah.
So which one are
I'm
you?
backwards.
Okay,
Yeah,
You want 51?
I want
21?
21,
21.
yeah.
21.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, for clarifying that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, so it's on 0021.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
All in favor of approving that at 38%? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. Council, would you like to send the other one back and ask for more information, or would you like to approve it or deny it?
I think we should table it for more information.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Any specifics on the information?
Just verification of the
Household income.
household income.
Yeah.
Now, I had already spoke with her personally about an explanation for that much in deposits, and she could not explain it. She didn't have any records. So I said, well, we can go ahead and add it to the household income, but we have to disclose that we don't have backup information on it. So she's been asked for it and couldn't provide it. So in that case, then what do we ask for?
There could be a clarification between income and assets coming in, could there not be? So,
When you say assets,
well, you said there was 6,000, almost 500 a month.
that's 6,286, and then it came in anywhere from, there were smaller deposits of anywhere from 20, and I think the highest one was like 714 and 83 cents. So you'd think that somebody that was in that income bracket, if they got a check for 714 and 83 cents, that they should remember the source of that income.
And I agree, that's why I'm just saying there's a distinction between income and an asset on that deposit, whether they claim it as what. So I still think we should find out what it is, but I don't know if we want to limit it to income. Does that make sense?
We just need more information. She needs to be more clear.
And then the zero on the roommate, did you want me to discover any more on that?
Whatever you
Household
can
income.
find.
yeah, household income. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of tabling this request pending more information on household income? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Okay. Okay, I believe, check me, Barbara, we're on item 6A now?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we will move to item 6A, introduction of the new deputy civil attorneys.
Thank you, council. When James Swink was county attorney, you approved a second civil attorney position for our office. And then with my change in positions, that left us 2 civil attorney positions to fill, and we've filled both of them. To my knowledge, this is the first time that we've had a civil division in the county attorney's office in Cache County as opposed to just having a civil attorney. And we appreciate your allowing that to happen and want to introduce you to our 2 new civil attorneys. Maybe I'll introduce first our attorney that just started today, who has a young family, and we didn't anticipate the changes in the
Sorry about that.
in the agenda, so he had to slip out. But his name is Taylor Sorensen. I'm going to, well, I know that his credentials may give some of you some angst because he got his bachelor's degree at BYU and his law degree at the U of U.
Oh, that's worse.
I am going to sing very briefly for you. My 11-year-old the other night came in and said, had me listen to this. God our strength will be, press forward the United States Marines, Utah State, hey, Aggies all the way. And I thought, as long as you can end up on Aggies all the way. And that's what I'm telling you about our new attorney, Taylor Sorensen. He may be BYU and U of U, but he's going to end up Aggies all the way.
Sing that. Convert both of you at the same time.
Oh, I've been converted since I was a kid. I had Wayne Estes pictures on my wall. Taylor Sorensen, in law school, spent time on a committee in Washington, D.C. I forget the committee, but he spent time interning with Congress. He's interned at the Utah legislature, worked at Park City as a law clerk in their civil division there, and has been a litigation associate at a couple of law firms. And so we're very pleased to get him. He's done all of that through his time in law school and a couple of years in practice. And then we have, if you'll step right up here, Elisa. This is Elisa Larson. Elisa is a Utah State graduate as a cello performance major who then went to law school at Creighton University. For 3 years, she was the go-to clerk for our first district court judges here across the street who sing her praises. And she's also got litigation experience and most recently worked for the Space Dynamics Laboratory, their in-house counsel. She's already been looking into detailed questions on the Davenport Road issues and is otherwise already being a great help. So I wanted to let you know of these folks. They'll be getting assignments to be working with you, and we look forward to that. And if you have any questions for Elisa, you're welcome to ask her.
Do you have an Aggie sign in your yard?
Yes, I do.
Good, hey. We approve of that.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome. Elisa.
Thank
We're
you.
glad to have you. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 6B. Approval of the 2021 COG project recommendations, and we have Mayor John Drew of Providence, who's also the COG chair. Come on up, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We started out the year anticipating that tax collections would be dismal. And as we went through the year, as reported by our staffer, Jeff Gilbert, the tax collections came in way above what we anticipated, and it was good news. We had enough money to cover all of the grant applications from all of the cities. One of the things the COG staff that reviewed all the applications, visited all the sites, came to the conclusion that they were all very well thought out applications and projects, and endorsed all of them. And we had all of the cities present their projects. It was at Nibley City. All of the cities had a public hearing, and everything went well. And as Jeff and I said today, this year was a good year for the COG and good year for funding projects. There's a link here in this package. You got a list of the recommendations to the videos and all the projects and grant applications submitted by each city. On that note, I'll take any questions. Jeff Gilbert's here to back me up, take any questions that the council may have.
And there were 9 projects submitted and all 9 were approved, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
There were 9 projects that were submitted and then
Yes.
all 9 were approved?
They're all funded.
They were all funded.
That makes it pretty easy for us, John.
Good. It'll be better than last year, Carl.
Yeah, we deserve a year off after that.
I just have one question. What's for Logan, because this is my street here, what's the corridor improvement?
Yes.
On 100 West?
Mayor Daines isn't here, but the Logan 100 West project starts from, is it 100 South? No, I know it goes to 6 South. Okay.
8991, by the McDonald's all the way up to.
So it's,
I think Fifth South.
so 100 West,
Okay.
T's, and there's a church property there. Logan City has acquired property to orient a road to go around the church property. Part of the project, and there's 2 phases to the project. The COG funded the first phase last year. Logan City waited for this year for additional funding. The plan also, besides going around the church property, there's a bridge crossing the Logan River. And then it will connect behind the new 4-story building that is,
Adams Well.
yeah, there you go. And they were required to connect, to construct a road behind their property. It'll eventually connect and go to 8991 behind McDonald's. What it does is the project takes a significant amount of traffic off of Main Street. And UDOT is anticipating or planning to come in to redo all of Main Street in Logan in 2025. So Mayor Daines asked that the COG fund this project, get ahead of the curve, get it done. All of the engineering has been done, the planning, the design on it, so Logan City is ready to go ahead. We also had, the CMPO had money, Jeff knows, close to 4 point.
Well, the additional CMPO money, I think, was 1.6 million.
Okay.
The total project's 12 million.
Right. So between CMPO and COG money, with this grant award, Logan City will have enough money to go ahead with the project. So this is 100 West, similar to 100 West, taking traffic off. On 100 East in Logan, there was a project that connected with Gateway Drive in Providence that connected and took a significant amount of traffic off Main Street in Logan. I can't imagine without that corridor connecting to Gateway Drive, taking all that traffic off Logan would be gridlock. Because I watch, our city office sits right on Gateway Drive. This also does the same thing, anticipates growing cities, growing traffic, and taking traffic off. And there's probably a reconstruction project on that intersection where the McDonald's is, where this is going to intersect with 8991. So,
Thank you, John.
but that's what this project is, includes a bridge construction and includes, the property I think has already been acquired by Logan City, so it's ready to go. Yes?
They're in the process of getting that property.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Second phase, what's phase 2? Is that the 100 East, John, that you were talking?
So it really was broken up into 2 grant applications because the entire project, as Jeff mentioned, $12 million. Okay. We don't have that much COG money in a given year. So the COG awarded Logan City the first tranche of funding last year for 100 West.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
Mayor, are we okay with the project in Providence this year so that we are happy with the citizens, happy with it, I guess? We're okay? I don't think we can make them happy, but are we okay with it?
We held a public hearing. So we opened it to the public to comment and no one showed up
That's
to
good
object
hear.
or in favor of it either way. This will complete 100 South, and one of the gentlemen who owns property on that is selling 5.5 acres to the city to expand Zollinger Park. So access to that additional park property on 100 South and improving that road will make a significant impact on access to Zollinger Park.
It sounds like we're in good shape then.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of pickleball courts, 5.5 acres.
It won't be it won't be pickleball there, and the controversy we had over pickleball has moved, and our pickleball courts are going to go in other parks where the local residents have requested pickleball courts.
Okay, council, chair will entertain a motion to approve the recommended unfunded projects.
Move to approve 2021 COG project recommendations.
Second up?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the 2021 COG project recommendations. I'll just add it's 9 projects at $5.4 million. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Mayor. Okay, let's see, so 6C, they're not able to come today, so we'll move to item 7A, general plan update with Lauren Ryan, our countywide planner. Lauren.
Was hiding. Wrong cord. I'll get it eventually. All right. Good evening, council members. Happy snowy October. What a surprise this morning. Pretty quick update for you all this evening. Last month was super busy for us with outreach and everything for the survey, but just wanted to give another brief overview because I know last month when I was here, a couple of you were out for the conference. So I'll just briefly go over again what we did for our outreach for the survey through the month of September. Sent out a media kit to our stakeholder group, our steering committee, and all of the communities throughout the Cache Valley, and had good responses there. Had a couple boosted social media posts through our Facebook and Instagram pages. Sent various newsletters through the countywide planning office, through our MailChimp server that we have, and then also people who are registered through the Imagine Cache website got newsletters and reminders to take the survey. Sent out those postcards to over 2,000 residents throughout Cache Valley. Flyers throughout all of the communities, and also had a couple press releases on UPR, Herald Journal, and then the Cache Valley Daily. So overall, our survey numbers, we heard from 1,117 public. In terms of the land use map, we had over 700 visitors to that page, and 61 pins dropped on the actual map itself. So I didn't want to dive too much into it because we are going to have a full summary analysis that our consultants complete for us. Results of the survey, compiling all the comments, and also providing an analysis of where folks who took the survey are living. So separating out the people in the unincorporated county versus the communities who took the survey. And I know I say this every single time, but next step after that is having a draft of the plan. Super exciting. So hopefully we'll have a draft. I'm still thinking by the end of this year, we'll have a draft ready to go. And then hopefully adoption early 2022, which seems crazy that we're already in 2022. But yeah, so thanks again for all your help with the outreach efforts. I think it went well, and I think we got some good feedback from the public, and definitely everything that I've looked through so far is headed in the right direction with everything that we've recommended in terms of policy and things like that. So happy to answer any questions you guys have, but thanks for your time.
Was the feedback you received generally of a positive nature, or were there a lot of criticisms? And
yeah, I think to say that the public is favoring preserving open spaces and recreational access is huge. Something that I think we already know, along with the ag community as well, and preserving the ag spaces that we have left. So didn't really hear a lot of negative comments, a lot of positive feedback so far. I think any negative comments we got are things that we hear time and time again in terms of too many people are moving to Cache Valley and let's stop it now. And I don't know if I have a magic button to stop that, but that's what people would hope we could do, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So
thank you.
Okay, great.
On your surveys, do you know how many were in the county versus in municipalities?
Yeah, so that's one thing. If people, we didn't require that people put their address. I do think when I went back and looked, I think there was only about 100 people who skipped that question of where do they live. So that's something that when our consultants go in and dissect everyone who responded to their survey, we'll be able to pull apart, who lived in the municipality versus who lived in the unincorporated county. So I think we'll have once I come forward again with that full analysis, I'll have those numbers for you exactly. So, yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Okay, item 7B is the 2022 citizens budget, and we have Cody standing from the executive's office. Oh, we have Bryce, the executive's office.
Thank you, councilors. Excuse me. We had put together a draft version of the tentative citizens budget, based on the tentative budget, and we had wanted to review that with finance to make sure that the numbers all were correct. And unfortunately, we were unable to get that done, and we actually talked to finance, and their suggestion was, why don't we wait until we have a final version of it, because there's a lot of questions still unanswered in the budget. And so if that's acceptable to the council, we'd like to push this back about a month and a half until we have an approved version of the budget, and then base the citizens budget off of the approved version of the budget so that the numbers are all correct for 2022.
Question for you, Bryce.
Yeah.
Since we started this during your tenure here, when we had Craig, I thought this idea of the citizens budget was not just to give the citizens a final budget, but to break it down easy, so when we come to that public hearing, they're able to look at it and kind of absorb some of it in case they have questions and want to come to the hearing and talk to us about things. And so would it not be more?
We could put something together. They were just on a time crunch and weren't able to meet, and so we talked about it, and that was the idea that was presented, is that we put together something. But we could put together a tentative budget first, and then a final budget after that, and just update the numbers and make sure everything's correct as well. So if that's of interest to you, we can put that together and have Cody at the next meeting. We just ran out of time getting the numbers double checked.
Understandable. I would prefer that. I want the citizens to be able to have something to look at if they want to come and comment at our public hearing or not.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay, I don't see any objection from council. So, okay, we'll put it on next time's agenda.
Yeah, well, on the 26th.
26th, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Okay, take care of all items 9 and 10. Okay, so now we're back to 11A, initial proposals for consideration of action. And we have the T&B Nelson rezone. Chris, you wanted to present some additional information to us, or rebuttal, perhaps is maybe the word.
I maybe add a little clarification there, and I apologize for my discussion on the side here. Talking with their counsel, they stepped out. I don't know if they're coming back or where they're at. But I just shared with him some of my concerns from the things that he presented in his letter. Some of the inaccuracies I thought I'd seen, and maybe I thought our wires were crossed, so I wanted to make sure we were on the same page, that we are talking about the same thing. So I'll point to those just really quickly, just as a matter of maybe not correction, but clarification. So a couple points that were made that I think are important to identify. The first one's really simple on the source water protection area. We're not working under a state standard, as is referenced in the letter. It's the county standard that says they have to be within source, or they can't put septic systems in source water protection areas 1 or 2. So while Bear River Health has been flexible in the past, the county's code is pretty specific and direct. So even if they had been approved as or if they are approved as a RU5 zone, they wouldn't be able to be approved as a subdivision. That would be denied because administratively they don't meet the requirement. So the second one was more specific to if the road serving the property was suitable. And I've tried to do some quick follow-up. We had a discussion about it here, and I think we did have wires crossed there. Because the understanding was for a minor local road, it required 2 feet of gravel on both sides. Our understanding is it's 4 feet of gravel on both sides. So that's a significant difference, an additional 4 feet beyond what they were anticipating. That would be conceived as unsuitable. I've texted Matt, because he's not here, and I haven't heard back yet, to get confirmation on that piece, but that would have come from Matt in our review, in our staff report. There are some other pieces there that I didn't address specifically that are going to apply to the width of right-of-way, the width of clear zone, and the paved surface width. So within that frontage, there's just that little piece for their piece that fronts that road. They might meet that requirement. But when we look at the whole entirety of the road of providing a higher density zone at the end of that road, I think the recommendation from Planning Commission and staff would reflect maybe that's not the best spot for RU5 from a larger range perspective of does that fit there. The third item.
That driveway is shared.
I believe.
Shared by several of the.
I believe so. There's a couple driveways. There's one that's shared by multiple, and there's the other one that's primarily there, but I think it is shared and comes up to another gate in the property that's got some other stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not going to delve into.
Don't bring it up.
Now, when we talked about that, they did mention that that was an ag remainder, and so I don't know how long ago when they approved those others, but that must have been a lot bigger piece of property, and they were able to carve off a couple of lots, or maybe only one, I don't know. And this becomes an ag remainder, which makes it a little bit concerning, because they were able to qualify for some additional lots, and then this in here was thrown back as an ag remainder, and then all of a sudden it's looked at as a single piece of property when it's already been split up. I guess the question that I have, and probably the one that's overriding my mind, is there anywhere that they locate an additional home that would qualify for a septic system? That I don't know without seeing the property.
I can show that to you again. I don't see that.
Okay,
I'm not
I don't
convinced
know.
of that.
11 acres is a pretty good sized piece of property.
Well,
let me
But
just
it
show
might
you.
not all be buildable, I don't know.
it gets pretty steep as you go to the north.
That's it, that's the only place I could see that you could put a home is further to the north, and it's not possible.
I talked to the mayor of Smithfield. He called me, and he's really concerned about protecting their water source, and
Yeah, you would
doesn't
be.
want to see this rezone happen. He's very concerned.
So,
If I'm right, in prior discussions, we've held very firm to the water source protections, right?
correct.
I mean, not that we bend or flex, but we have been pretty solid on those in the other planning commission discussions.
Yes. And I hesitate to use as a point for making a bad decision in the past. So I really feel that if we made a decision in the past that maybe we look back on now saying, maybe that wasn't the best idea, we not replicate that again. And I think that the commission feels that way, and I'm sure the council feels that way. I did pull the map up here so you can see the parcel outlined in green. This is the parcel that's owned by Smithfield. Get it right this time, yeah. And source water protection zones are in red. So the portion that's not affected is here, and then the access piece. So there is very limited spacing as to where now if they could put a home, I don't know if that's realistic.
Isn't that the little chunk that's wetlands? Isn't that kind of a?
There's wetlands as you go to the east.
Right where your arrow is.
Oh, I can zoom in.
That
It
area.
looks like just open water. Yeah.
I'd say that looks like
It's kind of a pond at times.
kind of cattail or bulrush or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do all those
It is.
other
It's a
homes,
little
if
pond
they're in that protection area, how do they end up getting permits to build?
That's a great question.
To the left, there's a home and the others are buildings, aren't they?
There's multiple homes here.
Of?
Just in this area, these are homes. There's a home. That's a home.
Up above that is a home.
Oh, right there. Sorry, I pointed the wrong thing. That's the home right there.
Yeah, there's sheds them up.
That's the one I was talking about.
I'm squinting at it. That's a great question. And that's where I would point to the fact that I think that was permitted and got through the cracks and shouldn't have been. That's my perception.
Yeah, for them to be out of that, they'd have to cross boundaries.
Correct.
My concern on it is I look at this and find out that this is an ag remainder. I wonder how big the original piece was that they were able to get a couple of building lots and then use that as an ag remainder. I'm assuming, by the way the property lines are, that that may have been a pretty good-sized piece of property up there that.
I don't think it was an ag remainder.
It wasn't an ag remainder.
The attorney
Well, no,
said-
it was the remaining was
It's a
agriculture,
remainder parcel,
is what he said.
and the way they did it, when you look at the plat, you'll be more confused than you are now. Because they created a lot of interesting things. I don't know how they did it. We have never been able to clarify how they did what they did on that plat for this specific subdivision, why this parcel was not included as part of the subdivision. And in fact, if I pull up that, I guess if we really want to go down that path a little bit. It's trying to load. We'll see if it does. There we go. So this is the original plat that was approved. And there were some interesting things identified here that we're unclear on. We have Lot 1, which is located right here, if you can see that cursor. We have Lot 2, which is just to the east. Lot 3 is here. Then we have Lot 3A. We also have Parcel 1 and a remainder parcel. We don't understand a good portion of how they accomplished what they did or why they did. But the best we can tell is how you see it defined now with the specific Lot 1, 2, 3, and 3A are part of the subdivision. And then there's been some other changes since then.
Do we have a date when that was?
Yes.
Put that way?
Was that 95?
1997 was council approval.
Chris, when it says remainder parcel, does that, like Gordy said, does that signify that was supposed to stay agriculture or something of that nature?
Under our current code, that's the case. For how it's defined and identified here, that's not the case.
Okay.
You know, Chris, as
And
I
then-
looked at that whole plot, I couldn't even quite figure out where the roads went to go to those homes. You know, it was just sketchy enough that I couldn't see a permanent road.
Yeah, we can point to some of those pieces. There's multiple roads that come into those properties.
Yeah.
That's in litigation between the
Yeah.
owners right now, the right-of-ways.
The date on that source water protection area for that spring, so this is that area in red that you were seeing, a good portion of that. It's identified as a WA Miles Spring. That was adopted, this one's created April 2000, and then they updated it in 2005. So you get a little bit of a timeline of some of the things that may have occurred there.
Well, it sounds like that
after the
stuff, a lot of that
subdivision.
was developed.
Correct, to the best of my
prior to the
knowledge.
protection of the well.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I say a lot of those lots were developed and even built on prior to the protection of that well.
As far as I'm aware, and we'd really have to dig in a little more with the USGS or the UGS, whoever's primarily responsible for this report, to confirm that there was no existing spring prior to the Miles Spring that also had a source protection area over that property.
But most of the homes that are built, I think probably except for maybe one, they were built before that.
Correct.
That date.
Yes.
You know.
You know, as I saw
The
that,
one
I
on
thought,
top of the hill was not, though.
That's a newer.
That's later.
Correct.
I saw that and I thought there's gonna be a lot more land in there when you really get looking at, that's the way it is. You know, there was a lot bigger piece of property that they were looking at before they started making lots out of it.
Yes, the other piece I need to address is the spacing off the county road. So we identified that there was a 125-foot space between an existing road and the proposed access private road, and it requires 300 feet. And so that is clear. That's not anything that I think that there's a lack of clarity on. And I think we had a discussion about that, and it became apparent to their council that that was a requirement that didn't have a lot of flex in it. And the only reason that was discussed is it gave them an opportunity, potentially, that we look at as staff to say, they don't have 90 feet of frontage. The only way to bypass that is to consider that road a private road, but they also can't meet the requirements for spacing for a private road. So it failed on both those tests to see if it could qualify to allow that additional home. And it all, for me, comes back to the point that even if this were rezoned to RU5, they'd still have to meet those requirements as a subdivision, which then means it would come to the planning commission as a request that could really potentially be denied because they can't meet those requirements. And so that didn't seem like it was a good service to them to rezone a property to then just tell them no on the back end. Anyway, all those things tie up into why staff and the commission's recommendation is for denial of that specific request.
You know, I sit here and ponder over this, and I think if I owned 11 and a half acres up there, what in the world would I do with it? I can't farm it. It's no good for recreation. I mean, it makes it absolutely worthless property. And so I sit here and think, what can a property owner do with a piece of ground like that? And it just sit vacant into perpetuity, or I don't know.
Well, the question comes back to is how long have these people owned it? Did they buy it with the intention to improve it or what? I mean, you've got to, all of those things have to be looked. I mean, it's not just this ground. There's ground in a lot of parts of the county that are addressed that way. I mean,
Well, it also sounds like the majority of that property is unbuildable. And so I guess it may sit that way for a long time because you can only build in that one little area that probably you shouldn't be building on because it's fairly close to the spring. That's the only thing I can figure out. When they were presenting it, I thought, what if you went clear to the top corner and build a home up there? But it sounds like that's not possible because of the elevation change.
And that source water protection area goes all the way.
yeah, so they'd have to
Property.
pipe their sewer a long way.
Yeah.
And that's still part of the septic system. It's not just the drain field, it's the whole system. If you have a line break, it's still going to affect your culinary water source. I did get confirmation back from Matt, county engineer, that it is 4 feet gravel both sides of the road.
So we ready for a motion or where are we at with this?
Do you want to make a motion, waive the rules, or do you want to save it till the next meeting and think about it?
I don't know if there's any more information.
Yeah, there's
that we
much
can-
reason to think about this one. He's identified all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And the planning commission was pretty firm in all of their votes as well.
I agree. I make a motion that we go ahead and deny it.
Waive the rules.
Waive the rules and deny this request.
I'll second it so I can keep on the good side of planning commission.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to waive the rules and deny the request for the T&B rezone. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will go ahead and vote. All in favor of denying the rezone?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Okay.
We can't buy friends,
One
can
is-
we?
One nay and the rest, yes, and so motion passes. Okay,
You know, on that though, it would probably be to Smithfield's interest to go in there and maybe somehow they could, you know, if they're gonna hold that property somewhat hostage because they're saying, hey, this is our water collection area.
mm-hmm.
Smithfield then probably ought to go in and somehow compensate all those people with some sort of value.
But we got those source protection zones all over the valley.
I know, but that still holds property owners somewhat hostage,
True. But
It does.
you know?
there's a bunch around it.
Okay,
Smithfield's got money, they're
Yes.
growing like crazy.
okay, I'll make sure we fix that. Okay, so we are at, okay, 11B, ordinance 2021-22, wait a second, did we have those same numbers? You know, we have a mistake on these, oh, that's a resolution and this is an ordinance, okay. I was looking at the numbers and I was like, oh my gosh, we renumbered them wrong. Phew. Okay. Okay, but this is an ordinance. So ordinance 2021-22, adopting the Cache County Consolidation Schedule, Fee Schedule. Deputy Bryce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I come before you thrilled to bring this ordinance to you. It's been through our Ordinance and Policy Review Committee multiple times. I thank Attorney John Luthi for his help and assistance in putting together the elements of this, which from about page 3 of this document to about page 30 roughly, you have a clean version of what the ordinance will look like, and then starting on page 16, there's a red line version to show all the changes that will be made to code to reference the consolidated fee schedule. And then if you get to page 30, the consolidated fee schedule is there. The plan here is to have every year during the budget, have departments update their fee schedules so that we have updated fees throughout the year, and so we're not falling behind and this schedule, loses its effectiveness. And so as we bring those budget documents to you in November, we'll also include any changes that we propose to the consolidated fee schedule. Placement for the consolidated fee schedule is going to be at the end of our county code after Title 17. Right after that, there'll be a link to the consolidated fee schedule, and it'll look just like it does on page 29, except the red will be black. And so, are there any questions?
I have a question. Does it need its own number? Because right now it's under sexually oriented businesses.
Well, then we break. We'll make it clear that this is not a part of the sexually oriented businesses.
Yeah, 50 cents per page is pretty cheap for that type of stuff.
When you look at it as it's formatted online, it's clear.
It's its own.
Yes.
Okay. Don't want to refer people to that to look up for fees. That's a problem.
Well, I didn't see any issues with it, and I would waive the rules and make a motion that we.
We got a hand over here.
I need to make just a couple of adjustments to my fee schedule if I could add these in as an amendment. I submitted this early on in my tenure when I was trying to figure out all my adjusted fee schedule.
Hey, Jess, will you come up to the mic so we can get, oh, you've got that one there. Okay. I forgot about that. Thank you.
I had proposed I'll speak clear into the mic. Marriage ceremony, we'd like to drop it down to $40. That's where it's currently at. We'd like to maintain that.
What page is that on?
Yeah.
Do you have a number of these? Would it be easier to just save this till next time and have you submit those in writing?
It might be easier just to have us update it.
Do
And I
that,
intended to have this done before the budget. We still could approve it tonight and then get this updated with the budget as well.
I like 2
Whatever.
more weeks to complain about the damn water heater fee of $40.40. I'm still smart about
Just to be
that.
clear, that's not in my budget,
Yeah.
my request.
But that's my whipping post right there.
Okay, we can get it updated and bring back a final version.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just submit it to council in writing and we'll get it all updated. So, okay. That way we won't miss anything.
We do hope you pass it sometime because we thought we might need to propose a fee schedule coordinator's salary position if we couldn't get this done.
So is this the citizens' fee schedule?
Okay, we'll put that on our agenda for next
Well,
time.
well, you could pass it tonight. I'm looking at my items, and all my other items could wait until next year. If you just want to pass it with that one amendment, I'd be okay.
With just changing it to $40?
For the marriage ceremony.
Down from 70.
75.
Council, what would you like to do? Do you want to wait or do you want to do it?
Well, that's nice of you.
I would say let's
married when I
wait, and
did.
then we're not bringing something else in again, and let's just do it.
We will wait for next time then.
It's cheaper to
Okay.
get married than it is to put in a new water heater. Are you kidding me?
Make sure that's in the minutes.
Dude, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move to 11C. Ordinance 2021-23, an ordinance changing the salaries of the Cache County elected officers and members of the Cache County Council. So when we approved a 3% COLA for employees, we neglected to recognize at that moment that we needed an ordinance to change those for the elected officials, including the county council. And so we have one written up now. So in order for those, in order for us and the other elected officials to get that COLA, the council has to pass an ordinance.
So now Paul can afford that water heater, right?
Do you see what we get paid? I actually can't.
He's gonna buy a used one.
Can't even buy used one. 3% equates to what? $10 or something?
Pretty close.
I'm a little short about the water heater, so we're talking here.
Just a little.
And I do have one question, and maybe Amy, you can answer this, but when I was comparing what we have here with what's already in our code, it looks like more than 3%, but I'm guessing that this is going on a yearly amount rather than, so it's maybe adding 6% rather to the annual salary, is that correct?
No, it should be adding a 3% to the annual salary, but there could be some rounding differences.
I'm trying to find that paper.
And I believe that the online version of the code doesn't have the current,
You're correct, John. It's not
old.
the 2021 salaries, it's the 2020 salaries.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Because I was like, oh, that's a lot different.
Reached out again to the company to say this is your last chance again. And if this is not done within a week, we will be switching codes. It just doesn't codify. Because this is about our fee.
I feel a lot better about it now that we're not gonna have to raise taxes.
It would look pretty bad, wouldn't it, that we
Yeah, it
raise
would.
our salary and then raise.
Raise taxes.
Yeah. So council will entertain a motion to approve this ordinance.
I made it last year, I'll make it again this year.
Okay, is there a second?
Effective for 2021 and through 2023?
Retroactive to July 4th of 2021, correct? Because that's what we did for all the other county
You're right.
employees.
Waive the rules, is that what you're?
I will waive the
Yeah,
rules
waive the rules.
and make a motion that we pass ordinance, there it is, ordinance 2021-23, is that the correct number?
Yes.
Resolution.
It's ordinance, has to be an ordinance.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 2021-23, which changes the salaries, increases the salaries of the county elected officers and members of the council. This is reflective of a 3% COLA increase that we gave to the other employees. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, one abstention. So motion carries.
He wants his water heater.
You're getting the water heater anyway, right? Okay, let's see. We did the property tax relief request. Okay, so item 11E, considering the separation of the clerk and auditor office. Utah law does allow us to separate that out. I believe we have to pass an ordinance doing that by February 1st of the year in which an election for that office would occur.
Well, I think, I wonder why in the world we're even considering it. I don't see any need or point. Everything's working well, and by separating them, we're increasing then the size of the bureaucracy and creating another office, another elected office, and with the associated staff and costs that are involved in doing that. And I just honestly don't see anything that would be gained by doing this. The auditor portion of the office really is controlled by the audit committee, and so the individual doesn't act independently. And so I think as far as concerns for separation of powers or responsibilities, it really doesn't exist. That's my 2 cents.
I agree with you 100%. I would vote against separating them. I was in on the discussion when we combined them, and it's been much better combined than when it was separated.
Well, I wasn't the one that asked to put this on the agenda, but
Can we hear why or what or Because I don't know when we combined them or the others, so.
I don't know exactly what year it was, but it,
Like
probably
2014,
been 10.
November 26th of 2013.
2013, that's close.
Quite a while ago then. At that time, it was quite interesting because when I first come onto the council, the auditor was the one that was signing the checks. And I said, what in the world is the person that's auditing the county numbers and the county stuff also be the one that writes out the checks? I said, that's gotta be a conflict of interest. And it got kicked around for a while. And then it was decided that that was, like Carl said, that was a huge salary that could be combined into the clerk side, because there was quite a few counties in the state that had them combined. And the council just decided that for the bang for the buck and for the way the auditor's office had done in the past, that it was to our advantage as a county to combine them all, save the money, and then structure it so that the audit and the clerk could still work together, but somewhat be separate. And so it was decided way back then that there was a cost savings to be made, and that it would still work within what we would want to do in the county. And so that was the decision that was made back then. And I haven't seen any conflict as far as the two of them not being able to, or the clerk not being able to take care of overseeing the auditor as well.
Thanks, Gordy. I will say that when I came on council, I always thought those two offices should be separate, so it's nothing personal that I want to make that clear. I don't see that it really saves the county any money, because our department heads and our elected officials do the work where they're a working official, and I don't see that it's saving us any money, and I think it would be better if it was an independent office. I think there's a conflict in my mind between having the record keeper also be the office that audits records. I know that Iron County has been considering of late combining their two, and it seems to me what they've come to the conclusion is to not to combine, and they have been told by people, their advice has been don't combine them. So I don't know how successful they are throughout the state, but I do think it is worth considering, maybe getting some concrete numbers. I think we owe it to the citizens. We combined them, we took away an elected office. Are we saving money? Is it a successful thing that we did? I think it would be great to have a separate office, because I'm not convinced that we're saving any money, and I would love to see some numbers to convince me otherwise.
I think we should go ahead and ask our executive to do some number chasing with his helpers, and let's see exactly what it was like back in 13 and where we're at now. Now we got to remember that we've gotten much larger and we've had to hire more people, but we should be able to separate out if there is a savings there.
I'd be happy to do that research for you if you'd like me to.
I think it's something right down your alley, and you got some really good helpers.
Any other comments? No? Okay.
I have
You have something,
questions
okay.
on that. Our audit committee oversees the auditor, right? And so any of the audits done is by request of that committee?
Yeah, we ran into a little bit of a misunderstanding earlier, but yeah, going forward.
See, and that's where I saw some disconnect.
There was a
But I thought there were some
there was a
audits that were,
misunderstanding.
there were some audits that were being conducted
Yeah.
by the request, they didn't come from the committee.
No.
And why hadn't even, the other thing is we've had audits that supposedly have happened. Can I ask where are the results of those? As a council, shouldn't we see those, or we're not supposed to?
No, we should see
No,
them.
we should see them. Yeah, well, I don't know what audits you're referring to.
Well, Jess, you mentioned you've done several audits, you said.
Oh, some of those would not be privy to the council. I could share them more in a one-on-one, but they would be more personnel type of an audit. It'd be more, it's a fraud accusation. We wouldn't really want to.
So those aren't requested then by the committee?
No, those come from private individuals who they can report through our fraud hotline or fraud, waste, or abuse hotline and say that this person or this entity within the county is committing fraud, and then it becomes our duty to go and investigate that. And we work with the appropriate bodies within the county to get those done. But those are very pointed, very specific. They're not like going into an entire office and doing a performance audit.
I don't know if we shouldn't still be advised of them in an executive session.
I'd be okay.
I mean,
I just don't want to release those to the general public.
Well,
I just think what we're getting, our county is getting of the size, and we're dealing with a lot of, I know the audit doesn't deal with so much the money aspect. I think that possibly we ought to empower the auditor to do that, if it was separated, so they could look internally, dig into those, more so than just personnel things. But I think we're getting big enough that we need a watchdog along with that committee. I think we're looking at it needing a watchdog for a lot of those things. I don't want to put any part of the county at risk otherwise.
So, brings up a question though. If there's accusations of fraud, what credentials do the person who's doing the audit have to delve into fraud and discovery of fraud? Does that make sense?
That's a really good question.
The elected official has the full scope of authority to investigate those.
I understand authority, but credentials or understanding of permeating and understanding when there's fraud, or how does that be?
So by state statute, the credentials are given to that individual as the elected official. They're given essentially by the people. But what we've done in one instance is we said, look, there was a very special circumstance where we hired out for this specific examination of fraud, because it did require some deeper CPA information. And so we said, and that's not the only reason, and I don't want to get into it in a public meeting, but we said the best case in this situation would be to hire out to avoid all conflicts of interest. So we had a third party do the review.
Somewhere along the line, there's a disconnect. The business of the county should be oversaw by the council, and I don't think you can ever go around them. They gotta be known, someone's got in the council.
I agree.
So,
This wouldn't be a circumvention, though. This would be a third-party tip. So I attended a meeting just yesterday, in fact. I was not aware that this was going to be on the agenda until we read the agenda today, the full agenda, and saw this at the very end. I wish I'd been notified, but I was glad to have been in this fraud discussion yesterday so I could help mitigate fraud, waste, and abuse. 40% of fraud is detected through tips. So tips and the hotline, those are actually the top in the entire country, the way that you detect fraud. Internal audits, 40%. Internal audits account for 15% of fraud being caught, 13% management reviews, 7% by accident, 6% other, 5% account reconciliation, 4% document examination, so only 4% for a document examination, 4% external audits, 3% by surveillance, 2% by law enforcement, 1% by IT controls, and 1% by confession. And so we are examining the way that we've been doing the audits, the internal audits. And we've worked closely with, after our last audits were released, we knew we needed to make some changes. I'll just say that. So we've worked closely with the audit committee, and we will be doing much deeper dives into the internal audits, into the finances of the county. And especially since internal audits account for 15% of finding fraud. And we have a network now that we can, not only within county, but external of through NACO, of resources we can use to help us meet the objectives of the audit committee. So we are examining, I know that there's a lot of questions of we should be doing more financial audits, and those are a big focus moving forward. And we just reported on that in the last audit committee.
If I could just clarify something, and I don't want to get into too much detail because there's confidentiality involved, but I believe the case that Mr. Bradfield is talking about was reported to the council in executive session. So we should probably talk offline and make sure we're talking about all of the same cases. But I believe we had an executive session a few months back and reported that to you.
I think that's good information that Mr. Bradfield has shared with us, and I encourage it to continue to evolve. But I'd like to see an executive session, or at least the committee that's over them would know what's going on. So,
Would it be the direction of the council moving forward that all outcomes of allegations of fraud, waste, or abuse are shared in an executive committee?
I think so.
Absolutely.
I would like that audit committee to actually be the ones that are educated to a point to where they know where the auditor is going, what they're doing, that they come back, report to them, and then whatever needs to come to the council comes to the council.
See, that's why I think it's a big job.
I don't think anything should be done without going through that committee's.
So
I just want to jump in, and I wasn't aware of this item on the agenda today. I didn't look, but I am just quickly looking at code sections, and I think there ought to be maybe an attorney office review of code sections on how this works. In my mind, this really ought not be termed an audit, but an investigation, and separate those two concepts out. And the state code does give the auditor's office some investigative powers related to audits, but I'd like to be able to do a little research of the code and just lay out the playing field for you all, maybe before too much more discussion in the event that the discussion goes in a place that the code won't allow.
I'm going to ask, how about even within, like, for example, your own department? If there was an investigation within the clerk's department, who then controls that?
if there's an allegation. No, by state law, I cannot audit myself. Any allegation against the clerk's office would be turned over to the executive's office for review, and or the council may also. So there's independent bodies. One is the executive is independent, one the council is independent, and the auditor themselves are independent. I cannot perform an audit on any of my own functions, a traditional audit. But the council could hire out for somebody to audit my department, or the executive could. So it's really, there's multiple options.
John, in that code, or does it say, because Jess brought up that there's 15% of the audits are in financial side, so how many times have we outsourced a professional if we're looking at that 15%? It would seem that I'm elected, but I'm not an expert in a lot of cases, so just because I'm elected doesn't put me in the position to do that. So does it give us instances when we bring outside experts in for that audit, or how does that go about?
Kind of thing I need to
look into.
Yeah. This is related to auditor, but kind of different. Just seeing this on the agenda here, I know that Jess, jump in. I know that Diana Schaefer is a deputy auditor, and that a lot of the tax stuff review also happens in the auditor's office. That I just remind us all of
That's why I think it's kind of a big job, the way that we do things in our county, and that's why I think it ought to be separated, so that the clerk's office can focus on clerk stuff, and the auditor's office can focus on the auditing end of things. And I've thought that for a long time. I thought that when Jill was here, that it didn't make a lot of sense to me to have them combined. It seemed like that office was focusing more on the clerk stuff and not so much on the auditing stuff, and there was a lack there. And so that, I think it would be beneficial to take them back apart. That's.
Do we have an idea how big each office would be or need to be if we did separate them? Do we have any? Is that what we're asking the executive to bring back to us?
Yeah, we need to know that information.
I think it's the amount of what you empower them to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we build up the financial portion of the audit, I think that could be you know, quite extensive, and they can, you know, and they can have other responsibilities too.
Mm-hmm.
But I've thought about that a lot too, and separating them. And one is I really don't want an auditor in any way to answer to anyone else. So it is an elected position, then they wouldn't be influenced nor you know, specifically answer to anybody else except for the people. And so there's no favors, there's no give-me's, there's nothing like that that could possibly creep in on a potential audit.
I think since 2013, did you say, Diana? The county has changed a lot. And we're dealing with a lot more money than we were at that time. There's different things going on. So I would really appreciate a study on separating the two offices out.
A few of the points that I've made is, as I tried to prepare for today, again, I was not given any notice of this, but there are some points. One, the service level, to reach the current service level would require a significant amount of support staff. All of my staff have been cross-trained on tax administration, and so you're talking about 4 or 5 other individuals outside of tax administration. The only people in tax administration are Diana Schaefer, a part-time secretary, and 2 temporary employees. And so what you're looking at is all the clerks have been cross-trained to assist during peak seasons on tax administration and for abatements. And so you would lose all of that cross-training. And then you would also, my initial is more than $100,000. You'd be looking at much more than $100,000 for another elected official, because we have $50,000 set aside right now for internal audits, because we were going to do some internals and hire someone and then an external and see which worked better, and hiring somebody part-time internally and hiring out externally to see which internal audits the council preferred, as well as our office, and which one worked better. So you would be looking at least at $100,000 tax burden to bring in the full-time elected official, because that $50,000 could only be applied towards their benefits, and so you'd be looking at $100,000 minimum. Plus, you wouldn't have any cross-trained individuals. So you'd be left with the department of Diana Schaefer, a secretary, and an elected official.
I guess my question, that, and Jess, maybe you don't know the answer, but what I'd like to look at is how many employees have we had before? How much have we grown? Because, you know, how many are truly needed, that kind of a thing. Those are some of the questions that I have for that. Because in the past, we haven't had that many, you know. I wasn't here when the previous auditor was here, so I don't know how many employees she had, but I think in the clerk's office, there was.
The last one we had was Tamara Stones.
Yeah, Tamara Stones, and I don't know how many people worked under her, but I would like to know.
It'd be different. The difficulty is that the auditor is not the same function as it was previously. Under Tamara Stones, they controlled the budget. And with an executive form of governance, typically the executive is over the budget preparation, and review. And so, well, council is the reviewer, but over the budget preparation. And so it's not an exact one-to-one as far as what was previously there and what is currently. Ever since Tamara left, it's always been, correct me if I'm wrong, Diana, one tax administrator, the elected official part-time in that, and then 2 temporary employees during peak time.
Even 2 temporaries.
Not,
Some of it's just overtime.
Yeah, and you know, I think that that is a good question, because would that change how the budget is prepared? Does it go to finance office? I can't remember what state law says. I know in the commission form of government, it is their auditor that prepares it. But I haven't looked anything. I don't know if it would change that, but I think it's worth looking at, just seeing. I don't know that we've had that many work in the audit department before, so.
Janine seems to remember that we had 4 employees in that department when Tamara was.
4 employees.
One of the biggest reasons against combining someone like, one of the biggest reasons, excuse me, for separating those offices in my research and in good audit practices is the fact that an audit should not be performed on your own office. And so more even than a clerk, a records manager, not performing an audit on their records, more important is that the budget officer should not be performing an audit on their own budget.
Well, they wouldn't, though. They would be precluded from doing that, so I don't
Well, no, that's
understand
why
what
it
you mean.
was separated. So,
The one thing that keeps coming to my mind is when you start auditing, there's a whole bunch of different areas that you have to audit from. When we open it up, when Diana retires and we need to replace her, let me go back and try to explain what's on my mind. Many of the times in the appraisers, the reason why the appraising office is different than some of the other offices is the fact that they've got to have a bunch of certifications before they can be an appraiser. And so when you open up the appraiser office up for a candidate, if the citizens elect a individual that's very popular and they haven't got the credentials, you know, we're in doo-doo here in the county. Same thing with an auditor's office. One of the great things by having it so that it's combined is when we need a special type of an auditor, if the people that we have hired in the office right now are not schooled in that, then that gives us an opportunity, as Jess mentioned, we can go out and let it go out privately. And I don't think that would be quite as easy to do if you've got one specifically elected. You know, it would appear to me that they would have to have an awful lot of experience and a lot of background to even be qualified to become the county auditor, and that's not a requirement in the county. If somebody wants to file, they can file and they can be elected. The same thing is true with us council members. When people vote for us and put us in, there's a huge curve that we've got to have as we learn what our council assignments are. So I think it's running fairly good now, and I'm not so sure that we want to disrupt it.
That's how I feel too.
Let's wait for our report from our, and if the audit committee wants to get involved in the information that goes to our executive, I think he could ask them for some help.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay,
Would I be allowed to speak to the issue?
yeah.
So I was there, of course, when they combined the offices in November of 2013. And I have that ordinance here in front of me, which was 2013-17. And like Gordy pointed out, a big deal was to separate the auditing from the accounting function, which is how it was under Tamara. And the staff that we had were myself, which was what Philip does now, like general ledger maintenance. There was a payroll clerk, there was an accounts payable clerk, and receivables, and then they elected. That's what we had. We have never had a budget for internal auditing of the financial matters. Now, like Luthi said, that's provided for in law. It's Isn't it 1719A that we're looking at? That's going to tell us about what the auditor's allowed to do. So by statute, the auditor's allowed to do financial audits of any department, division within the county, except for their own office, at their discretion. Now, performance audits have to have the blessing of the audit committee and the council via the audit committee. So that's allowed, but my point being is that I have to concur with Jess that if you split those offices, you're gonna incur more cost. They were hoping for a cost savings when they combined. The only cost savings was Tamara's salary. If you were to look back at all of this, it was $67,000, that was Tamara's salary. But in addition to that, when they moved me to the clerk's office, they had to then hire on Philip, who made more than Tamara did. So there was no savings. All of the internal audits that we've been able to do have been through the professional services line, which, like you say, is a private contractor. In all of my experience, we haven't had the resources provided to the auditor's office in order to have a full-time auditor. Am I qualified to do the internal audits? Yes, I am. But my time's all taken up with tax administration. So you'd have to hire somebody else that could devote time to either tax administration or internal audit if you wanted to increase that.
Which is why we added the 55,000 to this next year's budget, which was discussed in audit committee, at the recommendation of the audit committee to put in that 50,000 so that we could test that out over the next year.
And that was also noted by Lynn Lemon in 2013, that if we wanted more emphasis on internal audit, that there would need to be more funding for the office. But it was interesting to me in retrospect, as I looked back over this, is that although the accounting and the auditing was supposed to be separated and independent, we still don't have that. We still have a lot of the audit function within the accounting department as far as the external audit. So Jess or Jill was over like an internal audit function, and they did a couple a year, but with the accounting finance division, they are still very involved in your external audit. And I
should add in there that I've been meeting with Cameron about that to actually take some of those duties away from the finance department that would go to the audit committee and overseen through the office of the auditor, so that it was not, their conflict of interest did go away.
But if you're going to look at this and take a broad overview and do a survey, then I would recommend to the council that you also look at what your original intent was when you combined the clerk auditor, as far as separating that audit function from the accounting, which has not been accomplished, although it was mandated. And unless there's any questions for me, that's all I had to add.
Thank you, Diana.
Good.
Appreciate that. Okay, so council, why don't we have a motion just to make sure that we're clear on what we want to do?
I move that we table this motion, digest it more, do some more research, and to come up to a later date as specified by council and audit committee.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table this item indefinitely, waiting for more information wait till we get more information.
I think we
right?
specified that the executive and then later we added the audit committee to be resources in this.
And the attorney.
And
As this is my job, I'd like to be.
yeah,
Okay,
would make sense, yes.
so is there any objection to amending the motion to say what you just said, Gordy? Okay, so the motion is to table this item indefinitely while we await more information from the audit committee, the clerk auditor, county executive's office, and the attorney. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Items of other business, we have the USU Homecoming Parade coming up Saturday, October 23rd. If your name isn't on there and you'd like to come, let us know. And then we have UAC Annual Convention, November 9th through the 12th in St. George. Looks like that's all of us are on there. Okay, council member reports. Nolan, start with you.
I don't believe I have anything.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
I'm good.
Same for me.
Barbara?
Nothing.
Okay, Gordy?
Executive Sook, did we hear anything back from the convention center directors, pickleball or anything like that? Have you had a chance to discuss that with him, or did he have a comment, or?
No, he was out on medical leave. He's back now, but I haven't had a chance to meet with him about that yet.
Okay, maybe next time.
Okay.
I keep getting a call, is what my problem is. If you'd say no, I could say no. You know, that's the way it is.
Is that everything, Gordy?
Yes, please.
Okay, David?
I just had also a question that little Lewiston piece of property that's down in the southwest corner of Lewiston next to the river. There are 2 parcels, and one of them has been requested that we possibly, they're right next to the river on both sides of the bridge. And one of them was requested by a project, a big irrigation project, that they could use that right away, that, you know, a portion of that or something for a pump station. And 2 little slivers, everyone doesn't really know why they're there, but they're there. And wonder what the status on that. I know I'd asked Bryce and I'd asked Mr. Duck here and see where we're going on that.
Duck hunting property?
Does the county owns them?
So, I just hope that we can look into that more.
I don't think I have the contact information for the irrigation company. If you have that, I'd be happy to reach out to them. I don't know if Bryce has that.
Cub River Irrigation and the engineering firm, Branson Engineering.
I can find them.
And it's just kind of like these little slivers of property that we own kind of throughout the whole valley, and wonder why. And these are 2 of them, and one of them would like to be utilized. And so, because it's there's a $26 million project. What is that? $20-something million project, irrigation, to pressurize all of Lewiston out there. And they want to change a point of diversion so they can utilize that. And it's just that little sliver on the one side of the road that they're possibly needing a permanent easement, or sell it, or they're happy to do whatever.
50 acres, is that small enough? What are you
It's
talking
only like barely 1.8 acres.
I hate when you say sliver. Sliver to one guy means something
Yeah, that's
different
right.
to another guy.
It's like one's like 1.8 acres, and the other one's about the same on the other side, and they're just kind of like no man's. Anyway, something to look into, something we need to dig, and then so they can get moving on their requests.
Yeah, Dave and I have had conversations about it. I think it's a good project, and I'm happy to bring a proposal to you if you'd like to surplus it, sell it, something like that.
I know they're anxious to get that so they can turn in that request as soon as possible. There's a lot of funding that goes along with this, and it's a big project. It's hundreds and hundreds of acres.
I think we should probably look at donating it if it's that little of a sliver and it can be that much good.
Yeah, we might have to keep a little bit of it to keep holding on that.
Monument?
That bridge is about ready to fall. But anyway.
Okay, thanks. Is anything
Other than
else?
that, that's it.
Okay, I don't have anything. We do have an executive session, so.
Madam Chair, I move that we move into executive session and then come back here and close the meeting.
Okay, you need to state in your motion the purpose of the meeting, the executive session. Discussion of the sale of real property.
52-4, 205, parentheses 1, parentheses E, discussion of sale of real property.
Second it.
Okay, moved and seconded to move into executive session for the discussion of the sale of real property. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries unanimous.
I think